I'm going to show how I replaced this water heater. They come in lots of different styles. Mine's natural gas that runs on. It has a power vent here to the, kind of the flue, so it forces the air out. It's 50 gallons, 50,000 BTUs. They come in all different styles. They said electric, propane, anything different. So they're all kind of a little bit different in how they heat it. But generally the way the water comes in and the way it's heated or goes out is pretty much the same. I actually picked this model because it was made by the same manufacturer that made my previous one. So I figured it would be the easiest. It was actually a little bit taller, a little bit wider, but the way the natural gas comes in was the same, so that made life a little bit easier. But unfortunately, this was taller, which pushed the vent up, so I had to change that a little bit. Mine was really old. They're usually good for like 10 years, I think, say maybe 12, and then I forgot how many years mine was, like 16 or something like that. It wasn't making any noises, it wasn't leaking, so it was really fortunate, but I just wanted to replace it. Once I pulled it out, it was all rusted inside. So I'm gonna go through, pulling out the old one, putting in the new one, and just how I got it all together. So you're gonna have to think about how you're gonna get it to the location. I'm down in the basement here, and these water heaters can be like 200, 250 pounds, so it's a bit of a trip, but and also getting it out. So it comes in usually a pretty big box like this. You can see the brand. Mine is. So I just brought it down in the box. I thought it would be a little bit easier in case sliding it down the stairs or get a helper. You can see, I said before it was 16, mine's almost 20. It was almost 20 years old, so it really needed to be changed. So again, check the specs on it. This was a 40,000 BTU, 50 gallon. I'm just pulling out, just inspecting it, kind of looking at what was there, checking out the manual, everything before I get in place. And then checking out the existing, just make sure you know where cold is. So obviously you want to say the cold and the hot. This one's pretty obvious because I can see the faucet that goes outside. I can see that grounding clamp on there. So I definitely know which is cold, or, you can just touch it and you can generally feel, but be careful just in case it might be hot. So I'm just inspecting the vent. It came with a kit, these install kit. I didn't use all of this because they don't allow flexible gas lines, and I got that existing one or the same brand just so I didn't have to use that. But I'm using those flexible supply hoses. And again, just kind of look at it, make sure, okay, I know the cold's on this side, the hot's on this side. Again, read the directions so you understand, how it should all be connected, how to hook it up. So again, just a kind of final inspection before doing it. And the last thing, since mine has a vent on it, I went outside and pulled it off and then just took a look at it. Mine had the new one has specifications for that elbow there, so I'm just like taking a look at it, and so I'm going to replace that and then just make sure this is all sealed. So here's the replacement. You can see it's a little bit bigger, but it's the same size, 50 gallon. While you're replacing this, there's a lot of potential dangers here. So depending, I'm using a gas, so obviously if you've never worked on gas before, that's a dangerous thing to work on. Even if it's electric, it's going to be 240 volts. A lot of potential again there. If it's gas, depending how it's vented, this is a power vent that's going out, so you have to do that correctly. Even if you're just using the flume, that's going to be dangerous. Obviously, there's hot water, so while it seems like a pretty straightforward job, there's a lot of potential for getting injured. If you're not comfortable with it, I wouldn't recommend this job. I have a couple issues I'm dealing with here. New heater is quite a bit taller, not quite a bit, but just because of the low clearance I have here, it is quite a bit taller. So you see the vent here on the existing one is here, whereas the vent's up here. So I don't just enough room to make the turn there. I'm gonna have to deal with it because this is the exhaust vent for the power vent. It's going out there. It's coming in, and it's coming in at an angle because this one is in the middle. This one is off to the side. It's kind of hard to see, but I don't have any room to come in because of again, this one being higher. I don't have any room to come in off the side like that. It wouldn't be sloped anymore. I need to be able to go past the gas line here. So it's going to have to go on this side of the gas line. But the issue is this is where it's coming in from the inside. I can't get it here. It's going to have to make a turn here and come in on this side because there's no way for it to come down from the other side. That's why I picked these two, because it's the same brand. So it should be, you're coming in at the same, just about, actually I looked, it's the same height. And so as long as I can move this into the same position as that one, then it should be relatively easy. Again, this again is a little bit taller. It's not going to work that way. And I have the flexible vent, so I'm gonna have to cut it up a little bit higher here, cut up on this side, but there's not gonna be a whole lot of room to do that. So, and I still need to get in a expansion tank. This one doesn't have it, it should have had one. So before I take anything apart, I just want to make sure everything's off. So the gas is definitely off. I turn off the water to the house. Make sure it's unplugged because this one has, that's what uses that's how it lights the pilot light for the gas. Make sure the supply line is off to this is the cold water, just so when I go back to turn it on, that's off. And then I'm opening up the hot water and the cold, just getting any water out, because you have to empty the tank. This took a long time. It was over an hour, and it slowly started dribbling out. Luckily, I have a sump area, so I can just drain it to there. Otherwise, you're going to have to figure out how to get rid of all that water. And so the first thing I did was, now that I have everything out, was I start taking off the vent and disassembling that. So I'm just going to be just taking it all apart so that I can pull it out and get the new one physically in place. And I have to cut the supply. This is the cold water side. We're going to be cutting both of them. It's just easier. Again, the new one's a little bit taller, so I'm going to have to adjust where the supply comes in. So I'm having to cut this anyways. So I'm just working on that. Don't have to be perfect here, but you can see it was under a little bit of tension. And then pull this out, pull as much as you can, just to make it easier because it's taller. I'm sure people can give me a hard time because I have it backwards, but it was just the way it was stuck in there. That was the only way I could get it in. But then I just switched to the other pliers and just trying to get this piece off. I actually left those headers on there. It made it easier for moving around, but I wanted to get rid of the copper pipe just because it's sharp, but also those angles. And then I'm opening the gas line. Just check on yours. This usually has one to hold one side and then another to undo it. And I'm kind of just double checking, make sure I don't smell gas right now. Just as I'm doing it, just make sure that valve is closed, because it's probably been there for 20 years since the last one was installed. But again, just being overly safe, making sure before I even open it up, and then I open up and just double check. You might smell a little bit, but there shouldn't be obviously a strong smell of that sulfur smell of natural gas, if that's what you're doing. Here I'm cutting off the hot water side. This one had a little bit more, or I could tell there was some still in it because I could actually hear it dripping. And as soon as I opened it up, it wasn't too bad, but there's still a little bit. So just be careful. You might have some hot water coming out of there, depending what's the last time you used it. So I already had the bucket ready and some blankets in place down there just to capture anything. And then now I'm getting rid of or closing off the drain. It was enough. It was only trickling out. I'll finish it off. So get that out of the way. And then the pressure valve, there's a tube for that goes down. Just get that out of the way. So again, getting all of it just so I can kind of get it out with the least amount of obstructions. And then I struggled with this for a while because it's obviously, as I mentioned, heavy. It was probably like 250 pounds. There may have been a little bit of water left in it, but not much. And then I had that pipe sticking out. I should have got that off. Here I am. Let me see. Can I deadlift it? Nope. I could tell I wasn't doing that. So I put it back into place. So what I ended up doing was moving it around here. And then I put up, you can see it's just more struggling with it. Actually put a brick underneath it because I'm trying to get it out of that pan just so I could get it up over the edge so I didn't have to lift it. Ended up crushing the side of it anyways, but at least I got it out and was able to bend it back and reuse that pan. But so just expect all this. It's a big heavy thing, and it's got smooth sides, so it's a pretty difficult to work with. It's all manageable, but just have something in place. Like I said, I had this hand truck right there, so I was able to move it out of the way so I get the new one in place. I won't show you me struggling with that, but here I go. So again, I'm just double checking, make sure I remember which is the hot, which is the cold, and I'm going to clean it off. So I'm going to solder these joints on. So you have to clean both sides. So I'm using that. It's like a wire brush to clean it off. I cleaned the inside. I couldn't find my paste brush, so for the flux for it. So I was just using my finger, but I could get enough on there. So I'd already cleaned this inner side one with the brush. So or the wire brush, so that's on there. So put both sides on here. If you've never done solder, I have another video. I can include that. Just see how to solder, so I'll go over it kind of quickly, but so I'm heating up both sides of it, and then you want to then you have your solder, and you want it to be able to hot enough that it melts just by touching the metal, not by putting the flame on it, because when it's hot enough and it flows with that flux, then it'll feel all the joints. So I'm heating up a little bit, but I'm off to the side. I'm not actually touching the solder here. So you can see it's got a little bit of a green. You might get some steam, some smoke if there's any residual water in there. Make sure you get as much water out as possible because that'll just soak up the heat and you can't solder very good. It's a hard angle here to see, but you get the gist of it. This is the other side. This is the cold side. I had to put a little elbow to get it out of the way just because this heater is a little bit bigger. And also needed to put that thermal expansion tank. So here's what it looks like. Because I'm using those flexible supply lines, and they have threaded sides that go on each side. So that's why I'm going from that the plain copper to the solid or the threaded like this. So that's the cold side. So I'm just double checking it. So the next thing I got to work on is getting this vent out of the way, redoing that. So I measured it all out. I'm not going to show much on this, so it's very dependent on your location. I don't have very much of a run. It's only like 5 feet. So I followed the specs in the manual about the size of the vent and how you place it and all that. So I'm just going to put this together. Of course, my glue was dry, so I had to get a brand new one, try to get it off here. Just, everything takes a little bit longer all the time, but all I'm doing here is I was reusing part of that vent just because I already had the elbow on there and a good sized little kind of nipple on it that fit into there. So it needed to be a lot longer, and also needed to, again, get around that existing gas line, and then also just to try to get it in there and have enough slope where it's sloped up. Even though it's a power vent, it still needs a little bit of a slope like that. So I just finished that off and then put it into the power vent. And then I had 2 hose clamps here to tie down. One that goes to the fan side, and then the other one that ties into the vent. So just making sure this is all tight and sealed, because that's where all the vent from the heating from the burning gas is going to go out that way. And then just go outside, make sure I had the insert they recommended for the size of the heater and the size of the vent. So I put that on there. I'll connect it all the way later, but I just wanted to make sure it was connected out there and that it would clear this metal guard. I had to trim it a little bit, but that part's good. Before I turn it on, make sure you read the instructions. I've seen some videos where people are putting tape and dope on this, and it specifically says do not put pipe dope on there because it has rubber seals inside of it, and it can actually get damaged by flux, dope, anything like that. So if you look on the inside, it actually has a rubber seal. So the threads are not what's making it watertight. It's that rubber seal. It brings they give you some Teflon tape to put on there. That's really more for the lubrication, and to make sure it goes on easily. So just remember the side, the way it twists on is the same way you want to put the Teflon on, so that you're not going against it and pulling it off as you're threading it on. So again, they mentioned you put this on there, and so that you can, as you're tightening it down, you can hand tighten it to enough and kind of get a feeling, so you're not over tightening it. So I'm trying to get the shape of it so it's not under tension, so that when it seals, it's sealing, and you're not relying on the threads or the torque pulling it into place, because that's how things can leak if it's off a little bit. So again, I'm kind of shaping it so that it's on there. And with this rubber seal, just shaping a little bit more, and they want you to hand tighten it, and then no more than one turn with a wrench, because it's got that rubber sealing it, and you don't want to compress that or cut that. So I'm hand tightening it here. And then that's what you're really relying on, not the thread tape or anything else to seal it. So again, I'm not using 2 hands torquing it down. I'm just giving it 1 turn, just using barely finger strength, just enough with that torque, because it's a 12-inch wrench here, so you are getting torque on it. But again, I don't want to over tighten those the rubber seal gasket down and break it. And it's all good. It didn't leak, so you did it the correct way. So the same thing on the other one. I'm kind of shaping it just to make sure it's not under any tension, again, so that the seal fits tight against there, and that's what you're relying on for the leaks. And then the last part I had to get here was the gas line. So I'm cleaning off the existing joint on there, just to make sure when I put new seal on there, it's going to be clean and they make a good seal. It doesn't actually rely on that to make that connection. There's a nipple on each side, or it's a flange that presses together, and that's what actually makes the seal. But the thread is kind of like the backup. That stuff's more for, again, lubrication of the joints. But I'm cleaning the threads off. I'm actually cleaning that mating surface off to make sure it's flat. And I was doing the same thing Whereas I'm going to line up the joints so that when they go together, they're as square as possible, as flat. So you're not relying on the threading or pulling it together to pull them in place. It's naturally going to hold in place, and it's not under any tension, which could slowly leak, slowly move, later on. So I'm putting the small nipple side into it. These things have most of these gas lines have 2 places where you can put wrenches. The one here is for pulling it, or for tightening it. And, the same thing, don't over tighten these. You don't have to smash that down. You're going to break it inside probably if you try too hard with a pipe wrench or something like that. So I'm just getting that side in, just double checking, make sure that mating surface is clear and clean so that when they touch, it's just metal on metal. But I'm sealing the joints on the other side here. And then when I go to close it, it was the same way. If you notice, when I undid it, there's one place to hold it in place so that you're not torquing the whole pipe all the way. You're only pulling on the nut when it's holding in place. So you can see I have it's sitting plate flat, and I'm just double checking it from all the angles, make sure that it's sealing good, so that I don't have to put a lot of pressure on it to pull those 2 surfaces together. And so here, I was mentioning, you hold with one side and then pull and then tighten it with the other side again. You don't have to tighten this down too much. I'm not using my whole body weight or anything like that, just making sure it's got a good seal on it. And then the last part is the overflow, or the pressure relief valve that has a tube that goes down into the pan. You may be able to reuse it. I was able to reuse mine. I'm just double checking here that the water's off, and so I'm starting the water in the house, but I don't want to actually go in the tank yet. But I want to pressurize the whole house and everything before I start testing, and then I'm checking the leaks all the way up to that part that I changed, just to make sure there's no leaks. And then I also have the cold water on here just to double check. Yeah, everything looks good so far. So I'm going to go through a couple steps here first. I've turned on the water, cold water. So that means it filled the cold supply up to this point. This is still off, so there's no water going in to the tank. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that this joint that I put in and the existing valve was off, so I could cut off. So there's no cold water going. That means the tank is not pressurized yet. That means there's no hot water. But again, I just wanted to test that. No drips or anything. Gas is still off because it has to be full. That's turned off. It's not plugged in anything. So just testing out the cold water. And then I'm going to turn this on once everything's pressurized. So I'm going around the house, especially upstairs, get the cold water again, get as much air as I can out of it, so that when I turn on to the heater, the water heater doesn't have a lot of air in it, because I'm going to have to flush out from the cold to the hot side. Don't be too worried if your water comes out like this. This is still the cold side, because I've drained the entire system, and so any sediment is kind of moved around there into a different place where it wasn't settled before. And as soon as I turn the water on, it kind of flushes the line, but it's usually clear pretty quickly. If it's not, after, I don't know, minutes or something like that, you probably may have some kind of problem. Don't worry if the shower doesn't work. I think that's because it has these pressure sensitive, at least the newer ones have that pressure valve, so you don't get scalded if somebody flushes the toilet or anything. So there isn't pressure on one side. There's only, because I don't have the hot water on yet, so it may come out a little bit, but the valve's not fully functional. Cold water is fully pressurized now and got all the air out everywhere. That's closed. That's going to come out. Again, don't turn in any heating. Don't plug it in yet, because it has to be completely full. So now I'm going to test the this is just temporary right now because I need to go get some of these hangers just to hold support this. I'm going to test cold water going into the heater now. Not a good test yet whether anything leaks here, just because it's going directly into the heater, and so you're not getting full pressure yet. But once the heater's full, then you'll get back pressure on here, and then if there's any leaks or anything, it's really cold. But if there's any leaks, then you would see it once this completely fills up. So it's going to take a while to fill up the water heater. I'm also going to open up, this is downstairs here in the basement, open up the hot water right here, just to kind of help push the air out, so the air is not getting stuck here in the heater. Again, it has to go cold water. Turn this off so I can hear. So cold water again has to go into the heater, fill this up, and then the pressurized will go up through the hot supply line. Obviously, again, it's not heating yet, but it'll go fill that, and then it needs to push all the air out. So we want this to be just water, so that when it's heating, that's all that's in there. So it'll fill up from the bottom and kind of press the air out. Both hot and cold supply lines are pressurized. Oh, looking good so far. I don't see any leaks here. This is the cold pass where I had supply into the water heater. Nothing on the hot supply line side. We'll go around the house and open up all the hot water side just to make sure that all the air is out before I start testing the actual heating. Now that there's supply water on the cold and the hot side, the shower should work with the valve can pressurize correctly. I'm just going all the way over to the hot and just try to get out any air here as well. Clean it out as well. Before, just safety check here, test the pressure relief valve. So water comes out. So if it overpressurizes or some problem, the safety valve will blow open. That's good. And so you want to consult your manual again, whether you have electric or gas. I have gas, so I'm going to follow this, which is kind of the instructions I meant. But just read these and follow that for your specific case. So I've done all this. I've pressurized it. Next, I'm going to turn on the gas and just first see if I can smell anything. Then I'm going to do some testing for leaks. I just have some soap. I'll put it on there. If it's leaking, then the bubbles and the soap will come up. So do all that testing before even trying to start the heater. It's disconnected still from the electricity. It's not plugged in, so it's not going to ignite or anything. There shouldn't be any ignition sources here. So I'm going to try to turn on the gas and start smelling, just make sure nothing's leaking, and test it. And it recommends, the manual recommends waiting 5 minutes just to make sure it's all pressurized. Just kind of wafting it to me. Don't smell anything. Nothing's obvious, so I'm going to test it with the soap. They make special, actually, leak fluid for this type of activity. I'm just using soap here because it's a pretty simple thing, but just make sure you understand how it works. If you've never worked on gas before, again, you might want to just consult some expert or get somebody else to do this part. But again, mine was pretty simple, so I'm just putting the bubbles on there and just watching for any large bubbles. It looks good so far. So if there was any gas or anything leaking out, it would be making those bubbles a lot bigger and be pretty obvious. And then I'm going to get ready to plug it in here because now everything's working. I can plug it in. I'm going to make sure it's in the setting according to what it has in the manual. Just double checking leaks, anything like that, before I switch it on. Just one final time. So I've actually moved the switch, set to the setting of what it asked for, and then I could feel the vent it was turned on. I could feel it getting slightly warm. Went outside, just double check, make sure it was actually coming out here. It had a strong vent coming out, and I could feel it was warm. So I knew it seemed to be working correctly. Yep, give myself some thumbs up. You can hear the fan running. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this to what I want. I'm gonna start off the lowest just to see how it is. So you can set the thermostat here. And just test it out for a while and just see how it comes out before I set it up any higher. So again, you can follow the instructions. This is might be different on yours. Just sitting here again, monitoring kind of low here. Natural gas is going to be heavier than air, I believe. So I'm down low to make sure it tests, kind of wafting it every once in a while, and also just double checking. So I didn't touch this joint, but I'm going to go back and check all these joints to make sure I didn't push them or cause any type of leaks. And while it's running, I'm still going back, double checking, not seeing any water leaks here. So everything seems to be good so far. One last thing I'm checking while it's going is feeling the vent pipe. It's warm. I'm just double checking, not feeling any draft coming out anywhere, any would represent any type of leaks. It feels warm here. I'm not seeing any leaks or any kind of smell that I wafted over here. Anything that would make me think that it's leaking out here into the house. Again, it's open out here, so it's the least resistance. That's probably the best. It's been about 24 hours since I installed this. No leaks. It's always good. I come down and check every once in a while, a little paranoid, but I always feel a lot more comfortable sweating the joints than using connectors or anything like that. It's all up to you, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Um, I'm this is an unfinished basement, so it's not as bad if it leaks. Yeah, in a finished area or up in the attic or anything like that. Um, Again, no smells, um, no water leaking, obviously. We've taken showers, the faucets work, everything like that. Actually got a little paranoid and took my smoke detector, my battery powered one that has CO2, and I put it on the ground here just to, or left it for a day, and everything's good. So I'm going to call this project done.